what's going on with blood sugar regulation for the average child?
Blood sugar dysregulation does affect your child's mood, their retention and their learning, and their gut microbiome. It is critically important, and we need to take it seriously.
Kelly LeVeque, a certified holistic nutritionist, wellness expert, and celebrity health coach. Kelly LeVeque is also a best-selling author of multiple books, and most importantly, as she shares, the mother of 3 amazing little boys. Kelly is passionate about the science of human nutrition and is always guided by a practical and optimistic approach to wellness. One of the things that you talk about in your first book, which you've got a couple of amazing books, is freeing oneself from food drama.
Yeah.
Food drama. What does that mean?
Well, I think for a lot of young women and men, we grow up with specific body composition goals, and we're not equipped with the knowledge and understanding how to fuel ourselves, how to have great metabolic health, how to hit our body composition goals. We just think eat less calories, work out harder, but there's no education in junior high, high school, or college. And even when we look at physicians, the average amount of hours that a physician is required to get is 19 in going to school to be an MD. So how can we expect our young people to have the tools to be able to take care of themselves? And so for me, the drama comes in with not having knowledge and feeling like they get to a restaurant and they don't know what to order, or they want to be healthy, so they just look up the most fad diet that's trending at the time without going a step further to understand, well, what are the foods that I'm eating? What are they breaking down to in my body? And what do they do for me? And so my goal in Body Love was to give the average person who may not be super excited about health the keys to understanding blood sugar balance, nutrient density, and how to feel their best.
Yeah, because it's a relationship, truly. We have this relationship with food for our entire lives, and yet we're really not taught in our culture how to healthfully interact, how to have a healthy relationship with food.
Right. And I really like to meet people where they are, just like you do in your books and with your community. Is it has to be the food that you grew up with and that you love and that you want to make for your family and enjoy around a table. But we can find healthy proteins. We can find healthy fats. We can make swaps. We can add produce to our plate, fiber and leafy greens that really support our microbiome and elongate our blood sugar curve. And so that's what Body Love's all about. It's learning how to love on your body through food, what you need, what you don't, and how to feel your best.
And one of the big parts of your work right now and the impact that you're having on so many people is helping them how to understand the impact of their blood sugar on their metabolic health. Can you talk a little bit about that? And in particular, your Fab4, because those walkaway points are super simple and super valuable.
Right. And that's the key, is to make the science accessible to everyone, right? So when we talk about what breaks down to blood sugar, that's sugar and starch in our carbohydrates, right? And so then what doesn't break down to blood sugar? And that's protein. So the Fab4 is protein, fat, fiber, and leafy greens. And we'll go through all 4. So the first one is protein. So protein's going to break down to amino acids. It's going to have little to no effect on your blood sugar. Then we go into fat. That's your fatty acids, right? So that might be avocado, olive oil, salmon, right? Salmon is a protein, but it's coming with those omega-3 fats. Those fats are going to have little to no effect. They're going to have no effect on blood sugar and no effect on insulin, actually. And then when we get into fiber and leafy greens, I'm talking about produce here. So when we look at fiber-rich vegetables, the sugar and starch is actually wrapped up in a fiber cell. So you have to chew through it. You have to digest through it to actually allow for that glucose to hit your bloodstream and cause your blood sugar to go up. So it's naturally elongating our blood sugar curve because it takes a minute to break it down and assimilate it into our bloodstream, making your blood sugar go up and come down. And leafy greens have such a small amount of glucose present in them. And that, when I talk about leafy greens, I'm really talking about color, and I'm talking about herbs, and it's minuscule, but its impact on our hunger really helps. So when you think about the Fab4, protein, fat, fiber, and leafy greens, it's a mini checklist of things that don't cause any aggressive spike on your blood sugar, support the elongation of your blood sugar curve, and allow for you to look at a plate and go, okay, I have, maybe you're having a burger. I have protein in my burger. I have a little avocado on there for healthy fat. I'm lettuce wrapping it with tomatoes and onions. And maybe I'm going to throw a side salad on there. I'm going to throw some roasted broccoli on there. I'm not talking about the carbohydrates yet, right? The dense carbohydrates that would cause a spike and crash. But I'm asking you to build the foundation of your plate with the things your body essentially needs: essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, and all of those antioxidants and fibers and prebiotic fibers that feed your microbiome and protect you against oxidative stress. So it's like that is the foundation to build a blood sugar balancing plate with all the essential nutrients. And then from there, you can learn about carbohydrates and how you might have a spike and crash in blood sugar.
Now, why would blood sugar and dysregulation, abnormal blood sugar spikes, why would that be something we need to be concerned about?
Oh, so many reasons. So when we look at an elevation in glucose, that's going to cause, or blood sugar, that's going to cause an elevation in insulin. And elevated insulin levels cause an increase in inflammation. And when we have an increase in inflammation, that is the gateway to chronic lifestyle diseases. Unfortunately, an increase in inflammation also decreases our body's sensitivity to hormones that make us feel full, like GLP-1. All of the diabetic medications that are super popular for weight loss right now are acting on that same pathway. When in reality, if we can bring our glucose levels down and our insulin levels down, we're bringing down inflammation and we're increasing our body's sensitivity and production of our own GLP-1.
You know, when you mentioned the leafy green aspect, I wrote about this extensively prior to the popularization of all these GLP-1 agonist drugs, and how green leafy vegetables incite GLP-1.
Exactly right.
So it's that feeling of fullness. It's helping to slow digestion down as well. And just simple things like that again. But now we're looking through this through the lens of pharmacology again, which everything has its place. But these are things that our body is naturally able to produce. And here's the key, in the right amounts for you, in the amounts that are actually appropriate for the inputs that you're giving it. And that's the key, is giving it the right inputs.
You're exactly right. You know, in my books, I talk about a number of hunger hormones that are affected by protein, fat, fiber, and leafy greens. And GLP-1 is one of those interesting ones where protein intake and leafy green intake were both buckets that were hit. You know, we look at other hunger hormones like cholecystokinin, for example. That is a satiety hormone that makes us feel really good. That's released in the presence of fat. And we can double its production when we increase our fiber. And CCK, or cholecystokinin, and protein intake together is a great regulator of our hunger. It allows us to feel satisfied and relaxed and not think about food for hours. And when you aren't thinking about food, we don't need to gravitate towards the pantry and grab something that then would cause a spike in blood sugar, a spike in insulin, a spike in inflammation, and kind of causes this cyclical effect of we can't get our blood sugar numbers down because our inflammation is so bad. We're not getting our satiety signals. And so it's this really vicious cycle. And why people are leaning on, diabetic medications like Ozempic, because they decrease their hunger enough to not think about food, to not eat food, and bring their insulin and glucose levels and inflammation down enough to get into a habit of eating blood sugar balanced meals. But I'll tell you, before this popularization, I've worked with functional MDs for a decade, and we constantly were getting our patients off of diabetic medications like metformin in sometimes as little as 3 weeks. Yeah. It's doable with food. We just need the right inputs.
Yeah. That's the key. That's the key. And also keeping in mind too, when we take this blunt instrument, a GLP-1 agonist, we're looking at this in isolation. Mm-hmm. And you just shared CCK, GLP-1, there's leptin, mm-hmm. there's a whole symphony of satiety related hormones. Mm-hmm. And we're coming in with a blunt instrument mm-hmm. as if this is going to change everything for us. What's the impact it's having on the association with all these other things that each one of these things need their own inputs mm-hmm. to function properly, mm-hmm. right? And you just shared it. Protein is such a huge key in this mm-hmm. whole equation, and those fibrous, fruits and vegetables as well. And these are basic things, but the question is, are we doing it?
Right. And that's the hardest part is these quick fixes never last as long as you want them to. And people will claim that they are longevity promoting and all of that. But when we actually look at people who eat protein, fat, fiber-rich diets, they are regulating over 8 of their hunger hormones. They are balancing their blood sugar. They're decreasing inflammation. They have higher fertility rates. And, there was a study out of Finland too that even looked at insulin. High insulin levels is a better predictor than age of dementia. I mean, we are talking about it is opening the gates. If we can't get these levels under control, we're opening the gates for chronic disease.
Now, you just mentioned something that is particularly concerning right now, and I can't stress this enough. I try to talk about this every chance that I get. As of now, in a huge analysis that came out recently, total fertility rates worldwide have dropped by nearly 1% per year from 1960 to 2018. And this report was in the Scientific American, by the way, and we'll put that for everybody in the show notes. And I'm just going to read a direct quote from the paper. It said, "When people hear of this, there's often a natural instinct to shrug it off, believing that 1% per year isn't really a big deal, but it adds up to more than 10% per decade and more than 50% over 50 years. So fertility has dropped 50% over the last 50 years. And this includes miscarriage rates have been increasing about 1% per year in the same time span, a 1% decrease per year in testosterone and average sperm count. And the last piece here, and I've got so much data on this, by the way, but I'll share one more piece. Huge meta-analysis. This was published in the journal Human Reproduction Update. They found that sperm counts have declined by 50% over the last 40 years. Something is seriously wrong. We're talking about our species being able to continue to have life here on this planet. Like, right. This is what's more important than this. This is the most important thing. And it's just happening in the background. And most people aren't aware of this unless they themselves or somebody they know has experienced fertility issues. But this is a big, big challenge.
It's a huge challenge. And, I don't take it lightly. I'm very grateful for the fact that I have had 3 healthy children and had little issues getting pregnant. But I've worked with so many women on fertility challenges, with their fertility challenges. And it's heartbreaking as a mom and just as a woman, with watching friends, clients, and people in my community go through infertility. And there's so many issues at play. It's multifaceted, but when we look at it, we have to address a couple of things. Erectile dysfunction and polycystic ovarian syndrome are both signs of insulin resistance. And we have to address the elephant in the room that 2 of the number 1 issues with fertility in men and women are implicated by insulin levels, blood sugar levels, A1C, which ultimately is affecting their overall inflammation in their body. And so what we want is healthy metabolic bodies. And when we think about insulin resistance, the reason and causes of insulin resistance that are known or studied and science-backed in everything from animal to human models is inflammation causes insulin resistance, chronic stress, high cortisol levels, insulin resistance, and then our diet and lifestyle. And so what I always like to encourage my clients to understand is, what can they control? We can control the controllables. And one of the controllables is what we put in our mouth. I would say it's the biggest lever we have in our fertility. And so when we look at that, when we're looking to protect fertility, we are looking to have and focus on blood sugar balance and metabolic health and nutrient density. We know that sperm count and morphology is better when the man has a higher antioxidant diet. We know that CoQ10 and zinc are implicate. And when we put a man on a high antioxidant nutrient, even now there's prenatals for men and for women. So I'm an advisor for WeNatal, which is an amazing company that came out with a prenatal for men, because we know that if we can put a man on a prenatal for 3 months prior to conception, we can 4 times increase the chance of them impregnating their wife or partner.
This is so important. Like, the fact that this has even been being talked about now, because traditionally we're talking about, this is not based on science. It's just based on dogma. Mm-hmm. And there's like, even in like Game of Thrones or something like that, just like, she hasn't given me any sons, or she's not bearing children.
Right.
It can be you too, you know?
Yeah.
And so really paying attention, understand we got prenatal programs for men as well. And the health of the sperm, right. How important that is. We're talking about the transference of data.
Right. Absolutely. It's DNA from the mom and the dad. And when we talk about miscarriages, we're most often talking about, and they're most often caused by chromosomal abnormalities, which is happening from oxidative stress. When you think about DNA damage and you're passing down your DNA, you're talking about the damage of DNA causing a problem in conception and the body recognizing that something isn't right and having a miscarriage. So how can we protect the DNA of both the sperm and the egg? And then we have to take it back to how long does it take to fully develop an egg or fully develop sperm? And for men, it's 72 to 74 days on average. And for women, they should bank 100 days. So we are talking very seriously about not trimester 1, the trimester 0, which is 3 months prior to conception. There was a study that just came out with alcohol intake and men, and it impacting their ability to get their partner pregnant as well. And so men, unfortunately, there's this disconnect where they don't think that they're playing as big of a role as they are. And they most definitely are. We need them on antioxidants. We need them on omega-3s. We need them balancing their blood sugar. We need them working out and increasing those testosterone levels. And then we need them taking a break off of all of the things that are sort of those activities like smoking, drinking, illegal drugs. Like it's not the time for that if you're seriously considering having children.
Now, as mentioned with infertility skyrocketing in the last few decades, this is bringing forth, and I'm going to ask you what's going on here.
Yeah.
Something has changed, or some things have changed. Obviously, as you mentioned, what we're eating plays a big part of this, but that can't account for everything. What's changed in the last 50 years that's leading to these skyrocketing rates of infertility? Right.
So we want to think about all the things that cause oxidative stress in our body, right? And you can only eat so many antioxidants and healthy foods to combat that stress. So oxidative stressors can be the stress of our everyday life. I think about the stress of a job, the stress of a relationship, the stress of social media, the stress of endocrine disrupting chemicals, the stress of industrial seed oils. I mean, these are all inflammatory in our body, whether they're, things that we're eating or coming in contact with every single day that is causing a physiological response in our body where we are needing to release or protect against those reactive oxygen species. And so when I'm working with someone who wants to get pregnant, we are focused really seriously on lowering all of the endocrine disrupting chemicals in their house. We're cleaning out their cleaning supplies, their skincare, looking at makeup. We're looking at getting plastic water bottles out of their life. I mean, I think it's so omnipresent, all the stressors that we're coming in contact with. It feels like a losing game of whack-a-mole, but in reality, it feels really good when you feel empowered and okay, easy. I'm going to swap this cleaner for that cleaner. Okay, I'm going to get strategic about filling up a stainless steel water bottle, a glass water bottle, and eliminate plastic as much as I can. And you start to incorporate these little daily strategies and they become automatic. And so instead of feeling powerless, I want my clients and my community to feel empowered by the science and not fearful of it, because the world isn't changing, right? But there are things that you can do. Like you can get with your doctor prior to conception and you can get vitamin D levels. You can get iron status. You can look into your thyroid hormones and your antioxidant status and your amino acid status. All of those things are going to be predictors of how healthy you are, along with your metabolic markers.
You just mentioned something that, again, we become kind of jaded by the presence of things like plastics.
Mm-hmm.
And this paper just came out. It's microplastics exposure, implications for human fertility, pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And this was published in the journal Frontiers, and this was very recent. And what they found is that microplastics are showing up in, the placenta, umbilical cord. Obviously, these are affecting the development of our kids. And this particular report noted that fetal organ development was being influenced by the presence of all these plastics. Like, this isn't a joke.
Right.
When you're saying like switching away from using plastic water bottles, like this is ending up in your bodies and it's affecting your endocrine system and it's going to be affecting the development of our children.
Right. And I think what I want to stress is that science can and these studies can be really scary for people. There was a study that just came out, and I'm sure you saw it, that with one water bottle, we're getting about 250,000 microplastics. And that feels really overwhelming. But right there, I want everyone to turn that around and go, what can I do to avoid? How can this motivate me to get a water bottle, I keep a stainless steel coffee cup in my car at all times. And that's because
you brought one with you.
I did bring my stainless steel water bottle with me, but I will bring it because, the lining of the inside of your coffee cup, the minute something hot goes into what feels like a paper coffee cup, that plastic is leaching. And so heat really increases the amount of microplastics present as well. So there used to be, news articles that would say, don't leave plastic water bottles in hot areas or in your car. I mean, people brushed that off back in the day. A decade ago, they'd say it's no big deal. It's very serious now, but it doesn't need to be scary. You just need to have a plan.
With that being said, the avoidance of having your water bottle in the hot sun, for example, that was like kind of an extreme, right?
Right.
The truth is, even having your water in the bottle, period, whether it's in the freezer, it doesn't matter. When the water's coming in contact with that plastic bottle, plastics photodegrade, right? Just over time, those microplastics are going to be integrating. Water's a universal solvent.
Right.
So it's going to be pulling in and leaching those compounds. But of course, we can exacerbate it if it's heated up, yes, and get worse. But let's, if we can, move away from drinking water that's bottled in plastic. This, by the way, does this mean you can't have a plastic cup and fill it up with some water and drink it and everything's cool? Sure. But it's minimizing your exposure if you can.
Right.
That comes with education and understanding, again, we've normalized something that isn't really normal for convenience sake, because plastics are pretty awesome, as far as all the stuff that they can become.
Right.
But at the same time, there's no free lunch. Everything comes with a cost, especially when we're talking about our food and beverages. Right. Now, you also mentioned personal care products. Right? So there's this booming industry right now of beauty products. Ulta is it's like a club. Yeah, you know what I mean? I was just driving by, there's a little strip mall, whatever, and there's an Ulta. That's the most popping business of all these different places in this little strip mall. And now, thankfully, people are starting to ask questions about what is going into the makeup that a person might be using, what's going into the deodorants and the toothpaste and all these different things that there are all these now proven endocrine disruptors, obesogens, carcinogens, and we're just now becoming aware of it.
Right. What's so great is that there are amazing companies like the EWG and Think Dirty. Think Dirty is a great app that you can download to your phone. You can scan the back of your beauty care products, your cleaning products, and it lets you know which one of those are obesogens, which one of those are carcinogens, and they rank it. And you can even find the EWG verified ones. I know for a lot of women, they get used to a specific makeup and it's very hard to make changes. But if we're doing it one by one, there's so many amazing companies coming out that are supporting us to pull these endocrine disrupting chemicals out. I think it's all about having a game plan. And so if you're not ready to start with makeup, but you are okay bringing a stainless steel water bottle, a stainless steel coffee cup, you're looking at your fats. I think a lot of people will buy large plastic bottles of olive oil from a Costco or a large box store because they are saving money there. And I would say in certain instances, it may make more sense to get these high antioxidant fat sources like olive oil in a glass bottle or an aluminum bottle that is dark, that's protecting the olive oil from oxidation and protecting you from those plastics.
Now let's move a little bit further along the process of this amazing process of the creation of life, right? Okay. So now the baby's here, and this is something, fortunately, again, there's so much education around this today, but this was, when I was a kid, there was still this kind of big push that in many instances, formula is just as good, if not better. And especially my wife being from Kenya, just companies coming in and basically kind of negating the value of breast milk and saying, this formula has everything your baby needs, and kind of pushing that into the culture. Now, obviously, again, it's a blessing to be able to have access to formula and things that can keep a baby alive if they don't have access to breast milk. But let's talk about some of the benefits and importance of breast milk, what kind of, as you said earlier, inputs are getting exchanged between the mother and the baby as well. The baby's sending data back to the mother. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I want to just preface this that we both agree that this is a personal decision for the mom and the dad and their relationship with their child and what works for their family. I feel really blessed that I've been able to breastfeed all three of my boys for 18 months, 24 months, and I'm 9 months strong with my third. And I have a really good time doing it. It's really connecting for both of us. There is a lot of oxytocin, that love hormone, that connection hormone. And I really appreciate it as the working parent in my family, because if I'm gone, coming back and being able to do that is a really nice way for me not to have the guilt of being gone and to really connect with my boys. Beyond that, we want to think about all the nutrient density that's being delivered via breast milk. So not only is the baby getting all the macronutrients that baby would need, proteins, healthy fats for brain development, carbohydrates as an energy source and a substrate, prebiotics, probiotics, immunofactors. So what's so cool is if our family's fighting a virus, I have a 5-year-old and he brings home a cold to the whole family. The 3-year-old's getting it. The 9-month-old is getting it. If I'm in contact with that virus too, I'm able to deliver those antibodies to help my child fight that virus. So the duration of cold can be decreased and the intensity of symptoms can go down. And what we've now realized is there's a bidirectional communication between a woman's nipple and the baby's saliva. So everything from what the baby needs and nutrients is being delivered in this amazing way that it's just a bidirectional communication down to even skin to skin contact. So a 1 degree difference in the baby's temperature can be detected by the mother and immunofactors go up. So it's fascinating to me, breast milk research. And, it just goes back to the fact that like everything that's quick or fast or convenient isn't always the best. And there's always the other side of the coin. And so I would love to encourage moms, even if they need to supplement with formula later along the line, to still consider feeding and not giving up on that if they feel comfortable doing it because of all of the benefits. So there are things that we see in breast milk, like choline stays high for as long as you breastfeed. And we know like that's such a critical nutrient for brain development. We can look at whatever the woman's eating, we see those nutrient levels in breast milk as well. And so I always look to make sure that the mom's having enough vitamin D, iron, and amino acids to give their baby everything they need for just that cognitive development. I don't know if you remember when your kids were little, you go to a pediatrician, they prick the bottom of their foot and they check their blood. They're actually checking for anemia or low iron levels. And they're doing that because low iron levels in babies have irreversible cognitive decline. Like that is a nutrient that if it's low, the impact on their IQ and cognitive development is irreversible. And that's something we can control with our diet. If you're following the Fab4, you're throwing some protein on your plate, you're getting those iron-rich proteins like maybe it's bison or beef and you're pairing that with the leafy greens and you know that you're getting what your body needs and what your baby needs.
This is so amazing. Like we are so amazing and we don't get it. We're so distracted by all this stuff going on in the world. And the fact that your body will cater or the nutrient density of the breast milk will change based on your baby's needs, like that unspoken relationship that we're just, again, this is newly discovered information, but it makes sense. And it's been happening whether we understand it or not since the beginning of human evolution, and that relationship is incredibly important. And also I want to ask you about this, mentioning how important it is for the mother to have certain nutrients so that they're able to be catered to the baby for brain development. One of the craziest things, again, like going to a conventional university and I was taught how bad saturated fat is, for example, and especially when a woman first gives birth, that breast milk is pretty high in saturated fat. It's a significant percentage of it. And it's just like, and it changes over time, but they're like gates open, the blood-brain barrier, just to like shuttle that to the baby's brain for brain development. And one of my good friends, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, neuroscientist, she shared with me that the human brain later in life, it makes its own saturated fat. It makes its own cholesterol. It's not as necessary, but early in life, those saturated fats are very important. But again, it's going to be based on the availability from what the mother's eating.
100%. And that, I mean, I can't stress enough how much I lean into sort of an ancestral way of eating in postpartum, of making sure that I'm getting, those large cuts of red meat. For me, I do liver, bone broth, all of the saturated fats, all of the omega-3 rich fats. We know that a baby's brain is 70% DHA, and that choline is what is the taxi that delivers that up to the brain. And so choline is present in your egg yolks. We really, where I'm open with specific clients to whatever their diet and lifestyle is, I think it's critically important when we're trying to get pregnant, or when we're pregnant, or if you plan to breastfeed for a long period of time, that you're eating animal protein. I used to be a lot more open, but the literature is just so clear in the nutrient density and how much postpartum depletion can happen after having a child. And nowadays people are having babies later, and so they're having them back to back. When I look at it, I went from, like much of my friends, you have a child, 18 months later, you're having another, because I started later, 35 years old, and 3 kids before 40. I mean, it was running and gunning. Yeah. But when we see iron levels deplete, and we know the connection to cognitive development, and all your doctor says is, why don't you take an iron supplement? And it takes 6 to 8 months to get iron levels back up to normal. That's a red alarm for me. I'm looking for, how can I get a prescription for an iron IV to get levels back up if you're planning to have another child?
Now, this leads us to, so prior to pregnancy, then we've got during pregnancy, then we've got the phase of time of breastfeeding and or formula feeding. Postpartum. Yeah. And then now our babies out here, they're out in the world. All right. They're 2, 3, they're starting to go to school, preschool, all that kind of stuff. It's a whole different terrain now. All right. And this is something, one of the most exciting things about having you here is to talk about this. And I'm very passionate about this subject when it comes to childhood nutrition. But this is something that people don't really think about, the impact of our children's blood sugar on their health, right? Their mental health, their physical health. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's going on with blood sugar regulation for the average child? And what are some things that we can start to think about? Right.
Well, we want to address the fact that it is blood sugar dysregulation does affect your child's mood, their retention and their learning, and their gut microbiome. It is critically important, and we need to take it seriously. It also impacts their immunity. So there was a study that looked at children who had over 25 grams of sugar a day, which can happen quite quickly if you have a junior high kid who has access to candy, or they're getting something at a school or a party. Their immune system's capabilities decrease by 50%. And so sugar is decreasing immunity in our kids, and they're at school passing around germs. And if they're getting sick, they're not at school, they're not learning. And if their blood sugar is dysregulated, their retention and their ability to recall what they learn goes down by over 20%. So when we think that the food that we're eating isn't influencing our learning, our behavior, our mood, we need to think again, because we are our kids' parents and we need to have boundaries. Now, I also am a mom of 3 little kids. I know there are birthday parties. I know that sugar comes in the form of celebration and, for whatever reason, at school, at the parties. What I lean back on is I control the controllables. What's in my home are the things that I feel comfortable giving my kids. My kids do get dessert. I think that is something that is important to recognize. I just look for lower sugar alternatives, more whole food alternatives, and I give them the option to choose.
I love those very simple tips. Yeah. My wife, she loves her sweets, and she's passed that on to my youngest son too. They love their little things, but just making sure that we're stacking the day with high quality food, high quality proteins. He's getting his, fruits and vegetables in, and, so be it if he wants to have some kind of dessert, but we can take control of the quality a lot more today.
Right.
But here's the thing, and I want to ask you about this, because the average child in America, their blood sugar isn't being taken into consideration. You know,
Mm-mm.
when I went to school, you know, high school, I get to school, we've got, you know, some pancakes, we've got donuts, we've got mini muffins, we got orange juice. Those are my options. And that's what I'm having every day to start my day. All right. Maybe a bagel if I'm going to get fancy.
Yeah.
And then going from there to lunch, I would get a personal size pizza every day, pretzel with cheese. And, you know, then I got football practice afterwards, and usually like I'm having like a, you know, Gatorade or something like that. And then I get home and, you know, maybe I'm having, I don't know, some version of like SpaghettiOs or something like that with meatballs, SpaghettiOs with meatballs, if you want to get fancy with that too. But it's just like even thinking about how much sugar is in a can of SpaghettiOs, which I would eat at that point. I was starving, so I'd eat a family can of SpaghettiOs for dinner, or sometimes my mom would cook as well. But even what she was cooking is going to be a lot of ultra processed foods are going to be involved. And when you mention 25 grams of sugar, like I'm thinking I could easily get in 100 grams in a day, you know, having a soda thrown in the mix or a juice or something like that, and not realizing how much it was impacting my energy, you know, my cognitive abilities, you know, and I did well in school, but just imagine like what I could have done, you know, what our kids could do. And so often we point to basically a dysfunction of the child.
Right.
Right. It's a character flaw. It's a lack of some kind of asset that they don't have, and not looking at what are the inputs that this kid is getting. Right. And it's not fair, you know, because it's not looking at what's happening with their biology, and instead pointing to, oh, they have this behavior thing that they're doing. Let's medicate that or diagnose them with something. And we're not looking at what's happening with their biology, checking their blood sugar, looking at when we're saying they have a quote, chemical imbalance.
Right.
Are you actually looking at their chemistry? Are you running a hormone panel? No, you're just saying that.
Right.
You know, and those days are changing, fortunately, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And also there are businesses that are structured to capitalize off the illness of our children.
I know.
Multi-billion-dollar industries.
I know. It is soul crushing that Kellogg's is promoting cereal for dinner, that this is becoming the way that they give back to their shareholders. Like, that is irresponsible. But it does start in the home. And I think it starts with the parents. So my goal is always to work with the parents so that they understand how to balance their blood sugar, because it's very difficult to try and pull all the carbohydrates when you look at all those options that you had as a kid. Like, it's how can we work together to understand that protein, fat, and fiber, you know, produce work together to calm the body, to give it what it needs, essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, elongate your blood sugar curve so that you aren't crashing into your next meal, because a spike makes us feel energized in a frenetic way, and a crash makes us feel distracted and decreases our ability to learn. So how do we elongate our child's curve? And we can do that by having protein, fat, and fiber first. And so maybe that's, you know, scrambled eggs before you get to school, getting protein and fat. And if there is, you know, in some places there's access to avocado, and other places there's not, you know, but let's talk realistically about how can we get some fiber in the diet. You know, I'm getting, for parents who have a hard time buying fresh berries because you're like, they're either moldy or they go bad in my fridge and no one's eating them, buy frozen. Like, find ways around the things that cause the fresh foods to go bad. I mean, one of my most viral videos is teaching people how to make frozen vegetables taste like fresh roasted vegetables. And all you have to do is roast them in an oven to dehydrate the water, then put the olive oil and seasonings on, and they're crispy as can be. So there are ways around sort of the struggles of putting healthy produce on the plate, and you can use your freezer. But the reality is like, our kids need protein to function. We all need protein to function. We need to prioritize protein because our whole body is made out of it. All our neurotransmitters, all our hormones, our muscle mass, your metabolic health is based on your muscle mass. And if we don't have the inputs, then we're not holding on to that lean muscle mass. And our kids need us. They don't need to be diagnosed. They don't need to be told there's something wrong with them. They need our support and our understanding of blood sugar balance so that we can serve up the balanced plates so they can be balanced in the classroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And funny enough, we just talked about the cereal for dinner phenomenon on an episode earlier than this one. And I feel it's the reaction of a dying industry, right? So the profits were starting to go down. During the pandemic, they skyrocketed for them. You know, there was actually one of these popular companies that produces breakfast cereal that was going bankrupt. And then the pandemic happened, sales skyrocketed, but then it kind of returned back to that lull because more people are choosing real food, you know, as part of it. And I feel that these are those last ditch efforts to try to capture, because they're trying to make money, you know, and that's admirable for them to try to, you know, have a sustainable business. But to do that at the sacrifice of people's health is like, it's unethical.
Right.
And, you know, with that being said, we still have a lot of work to do. We can't let up now. And what you're doing, the education you're providing, and doing this with, you know, you have a family, a growing family, and a lot of responsibility, and just making the time to share your experiences is pretty phenomenal.
Thanks.
And if you could, you mentioned, for example, one of your most popular videos. Where would people find something like that?
Yeah. You can follow along at Be Well by Kelly. I share all about the Fab Four in my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. I have courses for pregnant moms. I have courses for moms who have young kids learning how to balance a plate using the Fab Four for kids. I think it's time we empower our children. I didn't learn much about nutrition until health in high school. It was one class. And then I was curious. So I took courses in college, but a lot of my friends never had a class that taught them anything about macronutrients, blood sugar balance. And I think instead of saying that all foods are equal, it isn't labeling or saying something is horrible for them. We don't want to fearmonger our children, but we need to empower them with an understanding and education around, oh, the chicken on my plate is by protein, Mom. It helps me get strong. And the berries on my plate have antioxidants. It's not blueberries, they're brain berries. Like, there's fun ways to get your kids excited and to educate them on what are nourishing, growing foods that support blood sugar balance and will help them be their best self. Because I feel like if you had more of an education at a younger age, you would have reached for maybe different things. And access and education are the two things that we need to work on as parents and as a community.
Yeah, you said it. I didn't know it mattered. You know, just that flipping that switch in somebody's mind is important, and also access to information. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Again, we've got a couple of books that are available right now, incredible resources. And also, can you share your Instagram again?
It's at Be Well by Kelly.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time. You know, I know you had to do a few things just to, you know, even be able to sit here with me, because you have a, you know, young baby still.
Just pumping in the car.
We'll just say it. She was pumping in the car just to sit here with us. So I really do appreciate it. And, you know, this has been really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
That means our children are not allowed to be in that pure essence. They're not allowed to say what they feel if it's going to hurt mom or dad. And that's really dysfunctional. That's why we grow up to not know who we truly are.